Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. I am your host, Roman Zelechenko. I am a former immigration lawyer turned immigration tech entrepreneur. I am the founder of Laborless, which is an immigration tech startup that automates H-1B compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which brings you this show. Today, I always say this, and then I always say that I always say this. I'm very excited. I'm genuinely very excited every week. Today, our guest is Bahar Ansari, who is just so many things. And I will try to list some of them, but of course, we'll get through some of these things during the conversation. So Bahar is an immigration lawyer who focuses on folks with extraordinary talent, but also tech entrepreneurs and so many other people with her practice. Her practice is 2nd.law. 2nd.law. She's also the co-founder of Case.one, which is a really cool legal tech company that we will talk all about. Bahar is also a social media and digital marketing guru and expert. She's all over Instagram. She's on TikTok. She's also on LinkedIn. She has a really awesome podcast called Lovely, kind of like lovely, but law, so Lawvely. And is building a lot of other things, which we will talk about and kind of almost announce on this episode. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Without further ado, Bahar, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited, and I should have brought my own popcorn, even though it's going to be a conversation together.
Thank you for that introduction. It's always nice to hear everything, boom, 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 your career in a few bullet points.
Yeah. And you know, of course, we're all more than just those bullet points and more than that, but it's like, the whole conversation, I spent an hour doing the bullet points. So it's like, let me just do a quick one and then we'll get started. So yeah, thank you for being here. I'm excited because, you know, typically I break these conversations into a little bit into like, I'm either talking to someone about immigration tech or immigration marketing, if you will, or sort of marketing topics for the immigration industry. And I think with you, truly, we can talk about both of them equally for a long period of time. So I'm excited to kind of dive into both and then also talk about how you've weaved together sort of your knowledge of and passion for immigration tech with your just experience and knowledge and passion of digital marketing and sort of how those have helped kind of build each other up. I think it's going to be really, really exciting.
It will be. We always have a lot to talk about.
Before we get started, just for folks out there watching, please give yourself a shout out. Let us know where you're calling in from, or not calling in from. This is not a phone-a-thon. where you're watching from. And so we'll bring your comments up here. And then of course, as we're talking, please ask questions for Bahar or me, but I'm boring. So ask questions of Bahar and we'll get to them and we'll really make this a really live and fun and lively discussion. So Bahar, you're in San Diego, right? Is that
Orange County?
Orange County. Okay. Orange County, California, not New York, because there's an Orange County, or there's an Orange, New York. Actually, is there an Orange County, New York? Anyway, you're not in New York.
Orange County, Florida.
Okay.
No, Orange County, California.
Similar. That's Southern California, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so it's similar weather because here it's interesting. Like we're getting kind of spring weather. There's, the trees are sort of budding, but I live in a pre-war building, and the heat still comes on, and you can't control heat in a pre-war building. It just like every room has a radiator and it's filled with steam that comes from the basement, and it's just so hot now that it's just like, I don't know, it's silly. I always think about what it would be like to have a real thermostat, but anyways. So, I always love starting these discussions, obviously, with learning a little bit about the person, right? I mean, that's really, to me, the most exciting thing. I think everyone's story is fascinating, but of course, in our industry, the story is often not overlooked, but not focused on. And instead, we focus on the policy and the law and the business side of things. But you have also a fascinating story. And I think, I've heard you talk about how passionate you are for immigration, in part because immigration is such a big part of your life. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 2.5. So I don't remember anything from it. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. But I wasn't born here. I can't be the president or the vice president, probably a bunch of other things too. You immigrated here as well with your family when you were young?
I did. I was 16. So I moved here when I was in high school. I was grown. I was the same height. So I was, pretty much the same person. But I finished middle school in Iran, and then I moved to Canada for a year. So we had that experience, and before we even got settled, we moved here. So I've moved a lot.
Did your family move to Canada with the expectation of staying there, or was it kind of like a known transition to the US?
It was a known transition. We know the immigration process. It takes a long time. You have to have qualifications. So of course, when my parents were younger, I think they had just had my sister. She's 5 years older. They applied for both. And they really chased the opportunities, and we got both. So I was born and raised in Iran, but I'm a Canadian American dual citizen. So
Wow.
I think, the experience of moving around is a lot by itself. You really learn to adapt, but living this way, having given up our citizenship and now being a Canadian American dual citizen, I think really removed the borders of my mind of what it means to live in another country, what it means to be a citizen, and what to take into consideration. Because Canada is pretty amazing to live in. They have good benefits. Like, a lot of people are still moving to Canada, but the weather, there's something about the weather and the culture. So, moving here, I had already made friends there. I had already settled. So when we moved here, I had to really learn the benefits of here too, because why another move? Why did we have to move here and then get settled? So that really opened my eyes to the process for families, to the process of the legal process of it, the move process of it. But it wasn't something that I considered doing. Like, I went to college. I was a journalism major and business minor. I knew I was going to go to law school, so I picked those to really expand my mind or prepare my mind. But I didn't necessarily think about doing immigration until after I had graduated and I was litigating, where I thought, I don't want to sell my soul to the corporate world. So how could I build myself a practice doing something that I actually enjoy that will help people, but also bring me some sort of income that I don't have to worry for the rest of my life about my student loans. So hence immigration. I built my own firm.
So it's amazing. And there's so many people in our industry who do go through or are directly tied to the immigration process, which I think is partly why immigration lawyers, maybe more than any other lawyers, I'm guessing, I don't know, are like super empathetic and really, really client service oriented. I mean, I just dealt with a real estate lawyer recently, and I don't know, it was just like an average lawyer experience. And I haven't dealt with another lawyer in so long. And, when I talk to immigration lawyers, no matter what type of practice they're in, whether it's removal defense or, E2 investor visas or H1, high volume H1Bs, they're all really it's like on a daily basis, they remember the reason they're doing this, to help someone move and change their life and things like that. But before we dive too deep into that, actually, I was going to ask you a few things. Well, number one, you said you moved to Canada, and then your family was there for about a year, right? And so then you got citizenship in Canada during that year, or was it sort of an ongoing process,
We got that much earlier. So when I was younger, we had moved, and then we moved back because I had a grandma with cancer. So then we finally decided to move and stay, after a lot of years back and forth. And when my parents finally made the decision that, all right, like, America isn't happening. We've been here, we've waited, we've gotten our citizenship, we've gone back and forth, because their intent was never to stay there long term. But, growing up as girls in Iran, they always wanted us to have an out. If we ever wanted to leave, to have an out and, test the waters, to live there and see that we really can. So my childhood was a lot of back and forth. And then when we finally decided to stay and started settling down, then we got our US green card interview, and then everything started rolling really fast. So it was a little unexpected. My parents either thought it would never come, or when it would come, we would be older, my sister and I, and we've kind of come to America on our own. Mm-hmm. So that was a little unexpected. But yeah, it was a lot of flying.
Which, who remembers that anymore at this point? What on what premise did your family come? Was it for work? Was it through a family? Was it like green card lottery to the US, if you can share?
So it was through work. It was through work with my parents.
Got it. Yeah, and I was gonna, and that leads me to my next question. So it sounds like you did do a lot of back and forth when you were younger. It sounds like initially between Canada and Iran. What was, I don't know, what was it like? Well, first of all, I'm curious. I've talked to, actually, interestingly, in the immigration space, there are a lot of folks who are from Iran that I've met, or at least that I can recall, who are in the industry, which is really fascinating. A lot of folks, though, their families left sort of, in the 70s. A lot of people's families, especially the ones who were born here during the revolution, a lot of people left. You obviously were, grew up there and lived there sort of in more modern times. I don't know. What do you remember about it? Like, what can you share about kind of your childhood or kind of growing up there, especially because you're moving back. So you're kind of going from Iran to Canada. Where were you in Canada, by the way? Like in the Toronto? Vancouver. Okay. Beautiful. It's so beautiful there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Like, what do you kind of remember about that?
It's funny you say the thing about the Persians having left in the 70s. My parents were going to university here. They got their MBAs here. That's how they met. So they did the reverse of it. When the revolution happened, their families were in Iran and they were feeling really patriotic. There was supposed to be some big change. There were good candidates. So they thought they would go and kind of be active. My mom was always passionate about law. My dad was passionate about business. So they had their own thought process that doesn't even make sense to them anymore. And they went back and the revolution happened and all the student visas were revoked. So they kind of got stuck. It wasn't their plan to live there. They always intended to come back to the US. So growing up, we were put in English classes always as a second language. I remember that. They were always telling us, we're going to leave. And every year we would think, this year we're not coming back, or next year we're staying. This is when I was younger in elementary school, until it finally started happening. Because when the applications are pending and you're living in another country knowing you're going to live, you're always living in a temporary way, right? You're not buying big things, you're not settling, you're not going to classes or learning new things, like only things that are relevant, because you always have this on the back of your mind. We're moving away. Like I remember the funniest story, I was 13 when I was dating this little guy. I was this whole dating scene. This guy had a crush on me. And I was thinking to myself in my mind at 13 that, I'm moving away from this country. Like, I don't want to get in a relationship. Like, what relationship at 13 can you get into?
Yeah.
But that should just kind of show you a mindset of growing up when you leave and come back, and every year you think you're going to go live long term, and you go for a few months. Then my grandmother had cancer for 8 years, so she was she was doing chemo, so we would always go back because my aunts didn't live in Iran. So it was a really temporary life, but it was fun. It was different. Like, you go from the freedom of being, for example, in Canada, wearing what you want, talking about what you want, going to school with girls and boys mixed, versus Iran, where it's separate, boys and girls school. Girls have to cover, from the age of 9. I was really tall always. So from like 6 or 7, I would get, there's a whole, cops, like the militia for hijab. So we would get pulled over. Why am I not wearing anything? Why am I wearing a t-shirt? Why don't I cover my hair? And my mom's like, she's not even the age. But I was a tomboy with super short hair. So I think that got me not to wear and have to cover up for a really long time, because I would try to pass off as a boy with super short cuts and loose clothes. But life was really different. It was fun in its own way. But I haven't been back since I left. I went back one time after I graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. I know it's changed a lot since my childhood there. It's changed a lot, but it's still different. It's still a whole other world. Like when I take clients from Iran now, I have a hard time understanding the culture a little bit. I have a hard time relaying like what business world is like here, what the legal system is like here, just because it is so different. Like, it's like we're speaking the same language, but it's like speaking a different language because it's still so different.
Mm-hmm. What were your parents doing? Because I know you said they both got MBA. So did they like run a business? Were your parents in corporate where they could move back and forth? Like, I'm curious how you were able to sort of maneuver this kind of global life, I suppose.
So my dad was always a business owner. He always had his own
Cool.
business. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so we had the opportunity to travel a lot.
Mhm.
When we moved here, it stayed that way. My dad opened a small franchise, the UPS franchise, that I worked through in high school and college and all the way through law school. So that's where my business side, I guess, comes in, because I've always been involved in the family business. You know, there was always a conversation at home, especially my parents like owning businesses together, seeing that it's possible, seeing that my mom was a co-owner and still could manage to be home and manage a different schedule, really like showed me how different life can be.
That's amazing. And I want to ask you how sort of, because you said you always wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to ask you about that, but before I do, I just wanted to make a point. Something you said really kind of struck an idea with me. You mentioned how temporary things felt because you always thought, okay, well, we're not going to be here forever. We're not sure, and so we're waiting for this thing in Canada. We're waiting for this thing in the U.S. It just reminds me so strongly of what I think a lot of folks who are on various visas in the US feel, because I mean, from my perspective, the H-1B visa, but there are many others who are genuinely like, they went to grad school here, you know, F1 for many, many years. They might have their H-1B for 3 or 6 years. And because the green card process is so onerous and for depending on where you're from, could be potentially take decades, they're living the same way here, right? Where they're like, I don't know, should I buy a house? I mean, what if the H-1B doesn't get renewed, right? Like, can I make this investment? So it just made me think about how temporary, how emotionally difficult it is to not know where you can live and where you can stay, you know, so, and to be able to, not to be able to plan for that.
And the mindset, you know, it takes a special kind of person, really. Like I say this a lot about my parents. It takes a special kind of risk-taking person to go despite that and say, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but let's just move for now because we need to go for a better life for our children. And then we'll decide again. Or should we buy a house? Should I get in a relationship? Should I change my job? Can I go back to school? Like, they're kind of stuck within whatever that little letter on their visa says for them to be that, when we know as human beings, like, it's all about coming here and wanting to be so much more than anything that you were destined for. So
what do you think it takes to be that kind of a person?
To be an immigrant?
I guess so. I mean, to be the kind of person who's like, I'm not sure, but I'm just gonna, I mean, this is sort of also a mindset of an entrepreneur, I guess, but it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. And you know, I don't feel certainty under my feet, but I'm just going to go for it, whether it's moving your family or starting a business. So we'll get to that. But I was, you know, as you said this, it's like, yeah, I mean, what does that require? You know?
I think it requires people to be brave, because you don't know anything for sure, right? You don't even know if coming to this country is a better life or not. It's a risk you're taking, and it takes education. Like, people to know, living in another country, to know that you can move to another country and create a new life. You've informed yourself. You've looked for options. You're curious. So I think it's curiosity, being brave, the risk-taking personality, and a special kind of person who's okay being alone, because the process could be, it's a lonely process. You have to come here and build a new life. And you have to have an open mind. Like, I feel like a lot of immigrants and immigration attorneys do have a more tolerant, open mind, and are okay with diversity and adversity. They've overcome things. I had an investor once on one of my panels, and the panel was about startups in times of crisis and overcoming these issues. And she was saying that one of the things that she took into consideration when investing in people, she wants to know if they've overcome any adversities. Like, maybe they've lost a ton of weight, maybe they were bullied, or she's like, just by mere fact that they were immigrants or raised by immigrants, it shows me they can overcome things. So if you know, things happen in the business that would maybe make other people quit or give up or handle it a certain way, that she would know immigrants would handle it differently by the mere fact that they're immigrants. So I think it does say a lot about a person's personality their dreams, their aspirations, their values, what's important to them, kind of based on the decisions they've made, whether that's in entrepreneurship or immigration.
Just in life. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and that's why there's always statistics coming out saying how many executives of Fortune 500 companies are either immigrants or sort of children of immigrants. All right, so I want to move on a little bit with sort of your story. So you went to law school. It sounds like you always wanted to or had sort of in your mind this idea that you would go to law school. You went to law school, and then you graduated and got into litigation. So when you were law school, I'm assuming then you didn't have in your mind this idea, like, did you take immigration courses? Were you thinking at all, or you were like law school and then a good job? That's what was on your mind.
I actually wanted to be a human rights lawyer. So that's why I went to law school. I had this dream that I would end up working for the UN. I really wanted to do it. It still hasn't gone away. I like treaty writing. I like negotiations. So maybe with some experience under my belt someday, I'll do that too. But I really wanted to be a human rights lawyer. I think, I was inspired by my circumstances in Iran with what I could have been had I lived there. Like, I couldn't be a judge. Women can't be judges in Iran. I couldn't be any sort of public official. I couldn't look like this or talk like this on camera so freely. And people know that, I say what's on my mind. There's no stopping me. So that could have been really dangerous. But I could see like the difference of how women were treated and men were treated, not just culturally, like legally, what women had the right to do and what men had the right to do. So, for example, if a woman was to be a witness in court, her testimony would count as half. That's Iranian law. 2 women to equal to one man in testimony. She inherits half of what a man inherits. So there are a lot of like inherently sexist laws. And I had seen like my parents' life after the revolution and before. You live through their videos and their pictures and the opportunities they have before versus after. And my family is super political. Like, we're an extremely political family. So I grew up thinking that that's what I wanted to do. Long and behold, I graduated from law school in 2012, when the economy was crap. So you were lucky to get any job, let alone, human rights or civil liberties. And right now that topic is hot. That was not the case 10 years ago. So back then I accepted the job that I got. After I graduated from law school, I went back and got a couple of LLMs because I wanted to teach when I retire. And after I graduated from there, I took a job working for a work comp defense firm. Mm-hmm. And that was a really funny decision to make because I came from this, civil liberties and human rights and unions and all of this. Now, working for a firm representing insurance companies. I was 26. And I took a sheet of paper and I was writing, the plus and minuses. And on the minuses, it was like selling your soul to the devil, defending insurance companies against injured people, like all this stuff. But, 1, it was a job. 2, it was an experience. And I always feel like you can make much better change from the inside, from doing things yourself. So I thought to myself, no matter where I end up, I am who I am and I'll bring my change. I will do it my way. And I was lucky I had this great boss. He's this super cool guy. Like he had this long hair that he never put up. And he was just super funny, like mellow guy. He's like, I don't care if you come to the office or not. I don't want you to screw people over. Like, here, this is how we do it. Like, first of all, on day 2, he sent me to court and said, call me without a file. This was his training methodology. Just go there and call me. Like, you're not allowed to be on the phone, but if a judge yells, just say, it's my first day and I don't know what I'm doing, and just give the phone. So I did. This is how he trained all of us. We learned by being thrown in. So the thing that he always said was, we don't want to give people more than they deserve, and we don't want to give people less than they deserve. Go be fair. So I was really lucky in that way, because working for a defense firm, with the culture of billables and how it's done, that's not how it works. They don't tell you to go be fair. They tell you to go bill. Mm-hmm. So I think that helped save my integrity a little bit, because you could go in the professional world and to blend in and be accepted, forget who you are. And I never had to do that. And while I was working there, I started my firm. I had a client, I had a friend of a friend who got introduced, and I knew of Extraordinary Talent Immigration just through reading in Google. And I knew she could qualify, and somebody had offered her some asylum, whatever. I'm like, don't do that. Just don't do that. Let me help you. I will help you with this. We will apply for your case. So we applied for her case. I still have my big legal folder that I self-taught extraordinary talent visas and green cards to myself through Google. Like I researched and printed everything there was and created my own templates. And her case was approved like the day it was received, like the next day. So within 12 hours of us getting a case number, it was approved. So that was a little bit of nudge that maybe this is the right thing. I enjoy talking to people. I have this coachy personality, and it takes some coaching to get to people to where they are. And she started, referring a bunch of other people to me. So my practice started getting built. I kept my litigation job. So this was like kind of my night and weekend thing, which was good because people were outside of the country. I would be on their time zone, and it would be great service, even though I was doing 2 jobs. And that's how I ended up building my firm.
How did you get that first immigration client? Like the friend of yours, how did they know to go to you and say, well, it was just because you were the lawyer that they knew? It doesn't matter that you didn't do immigration? Because, I think, because you weren't an immigration attorney, I suppose. You were an attorney doing this sort of insurance defense, which, to your point, is like the butt of every lawyer joke is insurance defense lawyers. So I'm just curious, was it just the fact that you happened to be a lawyer that this person knew, or did you ever put out into the world and say like something about immigration?
Oh, it gets better. So I have a tax LLM. When I graduated, before I took the litigation job, I attempted to launch my own estate planning and tax consulting firm. Just knowing that out of our LLM program, there were only 2 American students, which was me and a friend of mine, and we were licensed. I took the bar right after I graduated, and literally a week after I started my LLM program. So within the first semester, I got bar results and I had passed. So I was a lawyer in the program. And one of the students worked for a recording studio, and they had an artist who was being sued for a dog bite case. And they came to consult my friend and I on what to do. So we took the case. We took the case for her to help her because it was a puppy that didn't bite anyone. They were saying the puppy ran into my leg and my leg broke. And I have a podcast episode with her. If you're ever bored, go listen to her because she's so animated. She's an actress and she's so animated. She tells the story really well. But we took the case. The case went on for like a year. The dog defense case. We did depots. We won. We went to trial. We won. Wow. So throughout this period, she was already our client, and she was here on an O1 visa. The recording studio had sponsored her, and she was looking for an out. She didn't want to stay with the recording studio. She wanted some independence. And it took me a couple of times of offering her because I was this baby attorney, and here are really accomplished attorneys telling her she doesn't qualify. I'm like, you qualify. Trust me. I Googled this. And she trusted me. I owe a lot of this to her. Like there are few things that have happened in my career, like whether it was recognitions and awards for articles I've written, these clients taking chances on me on things I've never done before, that have pushed me to do more. And I like taking these cases. I like taking the weird cases that you don't think, like, there's no way that person could qualify under EB1. I'm like, I'll show you. They will. How could it not? So I like to try things, and she trusted me.
That's amazing. And when did you decide to leave the firm or, your full-time job and actually go full on with 2nd.law? Was it called 2nd.law back then, or was it something else?
No, it was called Ansari Law Group.
Okay.
Because, it was me as my group.
Right.
So
I was going to ask.
It's kind of what solos do.
I was going to ask if your email started with we and ended with us, and you're like, yeah, it's me, myself, and I.
Yes, it did. Yes, it
Nice. So
yes.
yeah, so what kind of, what pushed you to move and to say, okay, you know what, I want to do this. Did you feel like, was it at a certain level of workload that you were getting in and you said, look, I have enough now to pay the bills, et cetera, and it's sort of bleeding into my full-time job and I really should make a decision?
I was really bored. I was really bored at my litigation job. I was at the firm for like exactly 2 years or a little under 2 years. And I was the top biller in the firm from month six. I had already gotten raised enough to like double and a half, something like that, of my salary within the first 6 months, my first job. I had the highest rate of settlements. I was getting cases referred to me directly from adjusters. So these are things that takes a while to build in your practice. But I'm a people person. I enjoyed those parts of it, like negotiating with other attorneys to settle, or moving cases along. I'm also really impatient. So the billables didn't matter to me. I wanted to close the cases. Like I just wanted to push them through to do the fair thing. So I found a lot of ways to automate things without technology. Like I built so many templates that I was reusing because at some points, like they were auditing me within my own firm, my boss and the accounting side. So they're like, it's impossible. How do you bill? We want to see. And they were auditing me. Like if I wrote a letter, they would audit it to make sure that it would reasonably take that long, or it just didn't add up because I didn't work on weekends. Like I just manage. I'm really efficient. I find ways to hack systems and create templates. So it kind of started there. And while I was bored and I was building this immigration practice, I had enough clients where it could pay for my lifestyle. And I knew, like, long term, having come from, an entrepreneur family, it was always just a thing you do. I don't know. It's common with Middle Easterns and Persians. You have an entrepreneur personality and you're going to work for yourself. So I had a little bit of that. And when I had the possibility, opportunity to try, I did it.
That's
I did it.
amazing.
I was like, it's now or never. I have nothing to lose. I don't own much. I've been a baby lawyer for a few years. Why not? Like, what do I have to lose? What's going to happen? They're going to tell me no. And worst comes to worst, I can go to my old boss and say, hire me back. It didn't work.
Right. Yeah. And I was curious about that. You mentioned in terms of culture, did your family, were they kind of worried that you were losing, kind of you're moving up quickly with this job? Were they like, oh, are you sure? Or did they say, we're supporting you, go off to your own thing and good luck?
Oh, good questions. Good questions. When I was bored, if I'm bored with something or I'm frustrated with something, it's very obvious. Like I make it very known because I'm trying so hard to change it and come up with a solution. And I remember my brother-in-law and my sister would sit me down and talk to me and they would say, I'm spoiled. They would say, you have a really good job. You're making really good money. Like, what's your problem? You're just spoiled. Like my parents spoiled me too much to think that I can have the world. And why do I want so much more? And it was never about, for me, like money has never been a main motivator. So making a lot of money and having that wasn't enough where it should have been for a lot of people. For my parents, poor people, like most supportive people in the world, like they wear my shirts and go out, like they're super supportive. And I think that had everything to do with it. Like my dad always, anything I wanted to do, any risk I wanted to take, he always said, just go, we're behind you. We're right behind you. Just keep walking. You don't need to look back, we're there. So with that kind of support and mentality of do whatever you want, we're always there to support you, I think took a lot of any fear away. I had seen my dad grow businesses. I had seen my dad sell businesses. I had seen my dad move from a country to another where he had 500 to 1,000 employees to having two teenage employees at a UPS store, vacuuming the store on his own. So I understood that being a business owner and being an entrepreneur is not something cool. It's not a cool thing. It's not a bossy thing. It's not that kind of move. It's hard work. It's passion. And it takes a certain amount of independence. Like if people ask me what's the job of a CEO, I said the person who stays behind and brooms after everyone leaves and is cleaning and gets all the problems and gets all the trouble. Yes, you get to have the vision, but you have to clean up after your own vision. So I knew it wasn't like this glamorous life to go into. I knew it was hard work. So having them, like both my sister and my brother-in-law own their own businesses, my parents have. So having this support group who've gone through the failures, who wants to talk about anything, like every day, how was it today? Did you get a new client? What happened with your case? Like these are my lunch conversations with my family. So I think just having that circle of support made me not really think too hard. Like, do I do this or not? It was just, okay, I'm doing this and go forward, and there's no time to think. Just keep walking.
It's amazing. I think so many people get stuck in that space of should I not? And then they ended up, and they either, I mean, maybe they do it, which is extra brave, or they don't. And to your point, I guess having that major support, which is incredible, helps you. You have an idea, you think it's going to work, you just go. And if anything happens, you backtrack, you turn back, you go back to your, I guess your previous life. Mm-hmm. I wanted to just bring in a couple of people here. So Shiv says, hi, Roman, Bahar. Shiv from Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Shiv. Hi, Shiv. Leonel says, greetings from South Texas. Marianne from San Francisco. And thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Vitali from San Francisco as well. Marianne, as we were chatting, she said that Marianne said your childhood really prepared you for so much. Yeah, being flexible, rolling with the punches, et cetera. I think that is, to your point, to the point you made earlier, sort of immigration, like that investor said, immigration, whether you went through it directly or you kind of were brought up in a household where people went through it directly, it makes an imprint on the rest of your life in many different ways. And Geeta says very inspiring. So thank you. Thank you, Geeta. Thank you for the comments. Keep rolling the comments in, keep asking us questions. So Bahar, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned something that really is a beautiful segue into my question about where does Case.one come in, right? Because you said, you were obviously super efficient, super diligent. You grew rapidly at your firm. You ended up saying, you know what, I'm bored. I'm going to do my own firm because that's also growing. It's a wonderful place to be in. And then you mentioned, you love efficiency and you're creating templates and things like that. You're clearly on track for technology. I mean, your brain is already thinking in the sense of like, how do we get rid of manual work? How do we get rid of duplication of effort? So where does the Case.one journey start for you?
Oh God, I think it started while I was still at my old firm, and I would go to my boss and say like, I can't believe you're making us type this, or I can't believe you're making me handwrite my typing. This is such a waste. And I would always be in his office and say, let's look at this software. Let's look at this software, or let's go do this marketing. And he always would tell me like, Bahar, please you need to go open your own firm. I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want a bigger firm. I want to retire. So don't grow my firm. Just go open your own. You need to open your own. So some of the conversations started there. But when I started my own, I was using Dropbox. Like, my clients were international, so I had to use stuff to communicate with them. But for me, it might sound a little selfish, but the thought of using technology was to help myself. Like, there are template-based stuff that I didn't want to spend time on. I didn't want to spend my time going back and forth signing retainers, scheduling appointments, collecting payments, like all the things that make personal relationships uncomfortable, I didn't like doing. So I was looking for some sort of technology to get rid of it. One day I was visiting, by the way, there's so much funny stuff to my story. Like, I didn't have office space. I shared some office space with one of my attorney friends here in Orange County sometimes, but I didn't need to. I was working somewhere in LA and the rest of my clients weren't here. So when they were, I would make an effort to go to LA to visit them, take them to lunch or something. And they never asked to come to my office because I would go visit them. So I was at one of my clients' offices one time. He was a top app developer, had built the, I think, #1 or #2 travel app. So huge company, like global company. He had raised millions of dollars from, I forget which investment fund, but like huge investment fund. So it was a huge company. And here's the little old me, like going on an immigration consult. And So I had already signed the client. We were working on his case. And I don't know if this is usual for other attorneys, but I tend to work a lot on cases with spouses, whether it be a man or the woman. Like spouses are usually have more time to dedicate, not the main person who's working and or their assistant. So in this case, I became friends with the wife. She was the one pushing all the cases. They had a kid together. So one of these times I was visiting them and I was at their office, and I had such a crappy week. I had, this really horrible conversations with this one client. Just, I was in a really bad mood. Just, when you're feeling sorry for yourself and you're just helpless. And I was here at this consult, pretending to be okay. And she's like, what's wrong? What's going on? I'm like, I'm a little overwhelmed with clients. Like, it's just a lot of work. I'm just overwhelmed. And she's like, just tell me more about it. And this was, now I have this big mouth that I say anything that's on my mind. Back then I had a stronger filter, a little filter, stronger filter than now. And it was really out of character for me to open up. Like, this is my client. It's really unprofessional. I did it anyway. So I told her the story and why I was having such a hard time. She's like, what would help you? And I said, it would really help me if I had either an app or some sort of client portal, like something where I can keep my clients organized and keep my documents organized. Like, I just felt like everything was coming at me from everywhere. Like, here's an email, here's a Facebook message, Instagram message, like from everywhere, WhatsApp, Telegram, they would send me one letter here, one letter there. And being a one-person firm, like, I think I hired my first assistant back then. It was just a lot of work organizing. It was not legal work. And I'm not the most organized person. So, I have this creative personality, and filing is my least favorite thing of doing. So those are the things that frustrated me. And she said, I know this guy who's a friend of the husband's who was also in the IT industry. And she's like, I think he's already either built something for attorneys or building something for attorneys. Like, let me talk to him and find out. A couple of days later, she messaged me. She's like, you have to meet with him and you have to talk to him. He's in the industry. Like, he thinks it's really interesting. He also has global ambitions for US market and stuff. You guys have to talk. So I drove to her office and we had this Skype conversation that she had scheduled with him. I think we talked for 20 minutes. He showed me this 3-page kind of his dream or vision, a business plan from our first conversation to our second. And it really got me to start thinking that, holy cow, like, I needed this for myself. My idea that why I want it is because I want to be able to work with more clients without having to grow a firm. I bet you every other attorney needs this. And if they have it, if I can go from, helping 20 clients to helping 200 clients, and it's the same thing for every other attorney, imagine how many people we can help. So a week after that, him and I flew to France and met there for maybe 36 hours was the whole trip from me leaving my house to back. So we flew there, talked, met, English being my second language, his second language, just meeting, we hit it off. We had a similar vision of what could be done. And I came here and I changed everything. And I decided that this project is worth it. I saw so much potential in what he had started to build. He had already built a lot for the court system. They had built a system automating the entire courts of his country. And this was kind of the next project to build for open market for lawyers. So I came on board and we started working on all of the products that are out now. So we created a case management system, we created a chatbot, we created a document assembly software, a search system, so kind of global search for everything you have on any platform. If other attorneys were like me, that they had one document and email, one here, one there, we created the system that you can connect all of your outside platforms to one and literally keyword search through it. And while we were building these separate pieces, we realized, well, if we connect all of this, we could build a robotic law firm from start to finish, that everything would communicate, and we could build an assembly line for lawyers. So by then I had already all throughout, I saved my firm. I had my own firm. I had my clients. I had pulled back, so I was working selectively with some people. But it's really hard to come and tell people as you're selling software, like build a robotic law firm. Like I tried really hard to tell people it's possible. And I finally thought, I'm tired of telling people what's possible. Let me show them what's possible. So I took our own platform and I built 2nd.law with it to show the possibilities. And I think that was the game changer, that combining the software from this theoretical technology conversation to process and what it actually did for my life as a solo founder of this law firm without a team, without, I wasn't a big company. It's still to this day. I went on 2nd.law 2 days ago on my website, and on the first page, I changed the let us handle it for you to me, because it's really just me. I'm the lawyer. I have network attorneys that I manage, like kind of like Uber. I have network attorneys that I pay hourly or split cases with that I manage, but I'm the only lawyer. Like I will take the responsibility, and I changed it to me. So really all of the things that I did for Case.one was to be able to build 2nd.law.
Did you, I guess it's a marketing idea that you can go and say, here's the success that I had at my firm, right? Like here's how Case.one helped me. Then it's not, to your point, the sales pitch isn't theoretical. It's like, here's what I was able to, grow my firm 95% without having to hire anyone. I just implemented systems or something. Was that kind of the thought process there of like, all right, well, the standard marketing isn't working. Let me show them with my own example.
I think it wasn't just the marketing that's not working. It's the traditional mindset of not accepting that this is possible. So I did exactly that. Like at some point we changed from selling to law firms like within a year and to selling to legal departments, because that was the internationally that was working really well. Working with in-house counsels of Fortune 500. So building the same exact robotic law firm, we would sell it as an in-house legal desk. Like how in-house people have an IT desk, they could build a legal desk that's like do it yourself, all DIY with processes, with chatbot questions, with documents. And those conversations all started with me literally showing the front end and the back end of 2nd.law of how it's possible for law firms. And I started changing the conversation that way. One, showing them an example of the savings, because those are not the analytics that I measured as a law firm is not the same as what they were measuring in-house. So I had something to show versus people being on salaries that didn't necessarily track their time or documents or clients, blah, blah, blah. So I had things to show of how it was possible. And of course, I was bringing this competition as outside counsel, because I'm sitting there having a conversation. I'm a lawyer. I own a law firm. I'm also selling them technology. So it started opening their eyes, for example, on immigration. Like most Fortune 500 companies are bringing thousands of people internationally on H-1B and other things. So I also priced my services accordingly. It was super competitive. Like the old website had a reference to sharks and lawyers being sharks and chasing money, because I just wanted to disrupt. It was a way to get attention, to show what's possible. Like I think at some point for 2 years, as my promo price, I was charging $1,400 for 01 cases. And we were still profitable. So just to show the possibilities of what you can do. And it was an interesting time. That was still before COVID. There was still a lot of hesitation. Immigration market is different. I feel like out of all the practice areas, immigration attorneys are much more tech savvy. And that has to do with all of the stuff we talked about their personalities. The diversity, the working with people internationally, the risk taking. Immigration laws change at a drop of a hat. You have to also be a risk taker to want to go against the US government who can change the rules on you. Like to play with a government who changes the rules on you on a weekly basis, that says something about your personality. So excluding the immigration people in other practice areas, they weren't interested. They didn't see the world that is now. They saw it as something that they don't have to adapt to because it's not going to apply to their generation, especially because decision makers were partners, they were older. They thought that after they leave, they will let what's happening now happen to their law firm. Like, they didn't use Zoom. They were worried. This lifestyle didn't exist, right? So pre-COVID and post-COVID, like VC, it's a really different world. And now everything that I was trying to teach people, COVID taught people. It did my job for me. And I'm grateful for that, not in a bad way, but I'm really grateful for the disruption it brought to the market.
Yeah, it's one of the silver linings for sure of this otherwise really awful time. That, you know, in many industries, it's accelerated technology adoption quite aggressively, which is good for those of us in the space. But I think genuinely it's good for everybody because, you know, the only reason it was slow is because people just didn't allow it to move forward, right? Like, let's say you and I were, you know, before COVID, et cetera, we were like, guys, come on, you know, shaking the industry by the shoulders, like, wake up, we need more tech. But people, of course, you know, they've got their own momentum. They run their practice the way they do. So I, you know, one of the questions you mentioned, really interesting, that, you know, your perception that, or your kind of, what you noticed that immigration law is fairly tech savvy. I've always felt that, I guess legal tech in general is pretty slow to adopt. I always thought immigration tech was sort of in the middle. There are a lot of tools out there. But, you know, I always thought that before the last couple of years, it felt like there was pretty slow movement, but maybe in other industries, it's even slower. I'm not actually sure. So really cool to hear you say that. And so Case.one was not focused on immigration, right? I mean, you helped build out your immigration practice, but it supported law firms of all types. Did it also support in-house teams? I mean, did it help any legal type of, you know, environment?
So that was the majority of the user base, of the paying user base. The cool thing about the platform, like my favorite part about it, that you can customize it to anything you want without these integrations. Because there wasn't one company that offered all these different pieces. Like, you had to get your case management, for example, from Clio, your bot from this person, your billing system from that person. And then you had to do all of these integrations. So it's not a smooth process. And for someone, imagine an attorney who's not familiar with technology, to think, all right, these are all the features it offers me, not here like how it could solve my problem. And then where do they have this knowledge to think that I'm going to go get another technology and connect them to each other? Like, everybody's always talking these tech terms like integration, open API. Nobody cares. Can you connect these two or not? This is the question. But even to know if this is possible or not, you have to know what you need, what this person has, what that person has, and then how it could possibly technically communicate together. We closed that loop. We had everything ourselves. They still do, but we had everything ourselves. So what you could build, for example, it was the same exact combination of 3 or 4 products that we build for in-house versus law firm. And if anything, they could be on the same platform together. So if the law firm used the same technology, like our stuff, and the in-house team also used our stuff, it was just a matter of making a connection for them so they can communicate between their cases. And if they wanted, like, anyway, so they're in the same platform. Like, with one click, if you're outside attorney, let's say, who's, you know, distributing your cases and assigning them to attorneys, and you're picking a name from a group, it was just a different group for an outside person to assign someone to. So that made things really easy. But what we could build was from the client's perspective. So within a corporation, the clients are the employees. Within, you know, outside counsel, standard law firm, the clients is whoever outside. Mm-hmm. So in that case, we always started from client first. We built a portal. We mapped out all of the processes of, do you want them to be able to, you know, purchase a document, you know, place a service, place a request to meet an attorney. It didn't matter. That the portal, the entry point for the client was always the same. And then it was conversations with chatbot for answering their own questions. It was conversations with chatbot to order their own documents, like get NDAs without having to talk to a lawyer. That's really common in corporates. And the assembly line started from there. It would automatically transfer that document into the case management system and move through that assembly line from this person does this, assign it to this person. And the full-on task management, billing, all of that stuff was built with the specific user in mind. And I was the tester myself. Like I used all of the platform for my law firm, I also used the entire platform to manage Case.one in the company. I used our case management for our CRM, so salespeople management. I used it for marketing, for content planning and management, because visually you can create boards. I used it for HR management. I used it for contract management, like anything you could think of. I was the one who was always playing around in the system and finding the problems myself. So I could come up with ways, knowing how it worked, to adapt it to other places. And of course, if it worked, then we would go with our own example. Right. Like we would go to this company we had that was using it for their legal department and say, look how we use it for marketing. Look how we use it for sales. And here are our numbers. And then they would start expanding inside, because it's so much easier to do the land and expand. You get a little contract and you go from it. So we always used ourselves as the guinea pig to test on.
When you started, I mean, you were the co-founder, I mean, right from the very, very beginning, and helped really grow this thing. What were you kind of really focusing on? Obviously, you were not the technology side of it, although, of course, everyone wears every hat. But, from this sort of technical coding perspective, it sounds like that's not what you were doing. So it sounds like you helped manage sales and marketing. I mean, what was your role, I guess? What did you, yeah.
So I shared the CEO position with my co-founder. We shared that. And I was also the COO. So all of the operations was under my belt. I did the legal stuff. So I was the in-house lawyer. We went through 4 directors of sales within our first 2 years. So at the time, I always thought other people know better than me. So I tried to bring a lot of people in to utilize their experience. But when you're trying to do something really different, and your team that you hire to bring your vision to life doesn't believe in your vision, you either question whether your vision is correct or not, or if you commit to your vision, then you have to change your ways. Mm-hmm. So we did a lot of that. And it ended up that I ended up managing the sales team myself, doing the selling myself, like going to meetings and talking to people myself. I was writing all of our content myself. I was doing our webinars. I was speaking on its behalf. I was literally writing our brochures, because it's not really about who has the talent to copyright. It's about understanding the value you're bringing and understanding the client's process. I had worked in-house and outside. I have worked with insurance, like big corporate and not corporate. I had worked in family businesses. I understand business. I understand why things have to go a certain way. And that really became the premise of my podcast, Lovely, because I say that there's only 2 reasons in life why we do things. And this goes both for personal and in business. It's either because we want to or because we have to. Have to is the laws. When you go in a business, like for example, I was implementing or building a solution for a cannabis company for their legal department. And anything in the cannabis industry is, of course, through regulations. It's all regulatory. So I would ask them, why do you do it this way? And they would say, we have to do it this way. I'm like, you don't have to do it this way. You can do it this way. I'm like, no, we have to do it this way. Why? This is the law. The law requires for you to, like, at the end, have this data that you're tracking. It says nothing about the process. So let's just change your process and do it because of this. So within business, like literally you're either doing something some way because your boss wants you to, or the law makes you do that. So having that legal knowledge within business is really important. And I think for me, that's my most helpful, tip, or my most treasured skill set that I think I'm helpful in implementations of working with other people as consultants, because I just speak the middle. I understand the why of things.
And you could confidently push back and say, look, no, I'm not just trying to push back on you so I could sell this, this widget. I'm actually telling you that let's look at it from a lawyer's perspective. Like I'm asking you why, and you're explaining to me the how, and those two things aren't always necessarily the same thing. And a lot of people think the how is the why, but to your point, the why might be some result, but the way you get there could always be changed or upgraded and things like that. And in fact, that's where the technology comes in, right? Like the how often is manual, and so let's make that how better and more efficient.
So a lot of the content writing ended up being that, for that, knowing the how and knowing how to talk to lawyers and why. Like, where are they going to use this? Not just, an outsider coming and saying, you need case management because you need to track this, and this. Most people don't care about that. You have to find out what people care about. And some of the advice we would get, like we brought in advisors, we worked with a lot of people. And they were usually split. The ones that I least appreciated, like their support and help, was when they were telling me that this company and this company and this company are doing it this way, and I saying this, I know how to make money, like step back and let me make money for you. And I'm like, well, my point isn't just to make money. My point is to make money on my vision. That's how you grow a company.
Right.
I envision the product being used this way, and if it doesn't work this way, we're willing to pivot and go into a whole other industry. But how would we know if we don't actually test it? If we don't recommend it for it to be implemented this way or to be used this way? Like, I don't want to just copy, like there are a lot of startups in this area. For example, with case management, they come in and say, all right, you have Clio that's grown to be what Clio has grown to be. Let's just take what Clio is doing and do that. Clio came out years ago. Like, in modern days, I don't know what they are now. I don't want to insult them, but if a company in IT has been around for that amount of years, it's no longer as innovative as a startup is. So as a startup, if you want to compete with like old technology and old ways, why don't you just go work for that company or resell their products? If you have a vision, if it's about this creative vision of what you want to change, what you see you could bring and disrupt an entire industry, you can change the practice of law altogether. Why do you want to copy anyone else? So we had some of those disagreements about the pitches. And, sometimes you start blaming yourself because you're like, maybe I'm the reason like the company isn't going to make it. Maybe I'm too rigid and I'm not accepting, but there's a fine line there. Those are the stresses of being a founder. So we stuck with our guns. We did change a lot within our market. We just started moving where it could bring us some revenue faster. So we have this proof of concept, but we didn't give up at all.
Yeah, that resonates with me so strongly, where you're like, should I be, no, this is right. I'm right. It's like you get pulled into the direction of where your client is pushing you, but it's like, no, we went into this because we had our own vision and we had an idea, and clients are pushing you back based on their own preconceived notions, but their preconceived notions is basically by definition not your idea. That's why your idea is new. That's why you have a startup. So in a way, we actually have to push back harder. And so I to me, this is actually a really interesting transition, but because I want to talk a little bit about sort of how we get that message out there, which is inherently to some extent marketing. It's educating the whatever industry you're in, but to an extent, it's also kind of, how do you do that? Well, it's through marketing. But I'm curious, as you were doing this, I know in the beginning you said you toned down your firm, and then you sort of launched 2nd.law, it sounds like, as a separate law firm from your original law firm. Were they doing the same things? Like, did you end up rolling your old clients into the new one, or did you dismiss your old firm? Like, I'm curious, as you were building Case.one, what was your law firm kind of trajectory?
So I merged my old law firm and I rebranded and relaunched it as 2nd.law. And the idea originally of 2nd.law, it wasn't to grow 2nd.law into this huge thing, but to create this proof of concept. And based on like the market analysis and everything else that I did, it has a potential of becoming its own unicorn if I wanted to go the volume route. And at the time, I wanted to try the volume route because that's how you would prove the technology. So I rolled some of my leftover clients in that, and I just started taking a lot of new clients. And it was, of course, within a different market because our pricing was so low. And it was people who were willing to use, our technology and test with us and be betas, and they understood. Like a lot of the people who were at their time coming and going through 2nd.law were also in IT. So they had good feedback. They had, they had legitimate stuff to participate in what's wrong with the portal, or even processes. Like I remember one of my clients, he was a legal tech founder. He exited from his company. He had done really well. And he was my client for 2nd.law, knowing everything about Case.one and 2nd.law and everything that was going on. And sometimes he would call me and say, like, I don't think this process works. Like, the questionnaire on a chatbot is too long. I think it would be better if it's not so much questions on a chatbot and it would be this. So that was highly valuable to me, to have those people while I was building it in that way. And then COVID happened. So everything changed after that, of all the companies.
And I guess I want to, so, you eventually stepped away from Case.one. And so, you're not there anymore. I'm curious, actually, during the time, did you guys raise money, or was it all sort of self-funded and bootstrapped?
So I had put in just a little bit. Alex had invested for the most part, my co-founder.
So really it was kind of bootstrapped by the co-founders. You never ended up raising any institutional money after that?
No.
That's amazing. So it was a lot of just your own blood, sweat, and tears. And then, of course, I'm assuming at some point you started getting paid clients, and then the sort of revenue generation helped grow the company. And I mean, I think big. I mean, it's a big company as far as I know. I mean, you had a lot of big clients all around the world, right?
So yes, remember, like, the company was existing with other software with my co-founder. So his company was already, I think, at 100 million valuation before we launched this arm of it to sell globally. So not all of it. I'm not going to take credit for a lot of the success, because a lot of it was existing, but it's quite a big company. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, cool. And so, that's really inspiring in and of itself. That, I mean, there's so much, even now still, I guess, excitement about people raising money. And of course, raising money is great because it enables you to do stuff maybe more quickly, but it's not about raising money. It's about building business and creating solutions for clients. So I do always love hearing stories about people who have built something quite sizable and successful who didn't need outside funding. But then you eventually stepped away, and I am curious, not to say that it was sort of like a traditional exit where you guys sold to a PE firm and everyone walked away, sort of buying their yachts and sailing off into the sunset. But I am curious, though, right? The company is still going. You kind of stepped away. You're focusing on your own law firm. I'm just curious, like, what was that experience like, from what you can share, and maybe some takeaways about kind of having been, you were here at the ground level, you all built it up together. You eventually walked away. Like, what are some of the things that you think you've learned or taken away from that whole experience?
A lot. I feel like most of what I know now, to avoid any of the same mistakes that I've made, I learned there. Like, not only was the company and the product amazing, and all the things that I had the freedom to try. We tested anything you could think of, we were testing. Like, we both have impatient personalities, creative, stubborn, everything you can think of. So we were supportive of each other's craziness, like really craziness, to experiment and learn. So I don't, like, that experience is invaluable to me. But really, like, I flew back last year. I was on a birthday trip, and then I flew back on March 17th when everything shut down. And I had to quarantine. I was at home for like 3 weeks by myself. And I remember, like, as we went into the lockdown, right behind here, I had my yoga mat on the floor, and I would, get up from work and do stretches. And I was just laying there a lot of days, and I was just looking up, and I couldn't stop crying. I was just sitting there crying, because there was something about the company that died for me. I don't know how to explain it. It was like the death of a dream, because my dream was really to teach people this possibility of utilizing technology and the modern practice of law. And when I got into it, like, when I decided to go into Case.one, like a lot of the analysis was even that I could help other people, close the access to justice gap. I could change the legal system. It closes the door from what I thought I would go into human rights. It's coming through it the back way. So I had all of this image and justifications and my whys of why I wanted to do that. And here was with COVID, like COVID created the urgency and taught all of that. Like overnight, people were online. Overnight, people were, taking clients online, adjusting. So I had two ways to think about it. Either I write this out and this will be right now the most successful company in the world, will be number one in IT and I'll make a lot of money. What would I do then? I'll likely exit because I accomplished my goal. It's happening. Or what am I going to do now with my life? Like I could stay, I could grow it, or I could have a new dream. Like if you think about like most people have their midlife crises in their 40s or something, and they have this opportunity to kind of try to rebuild themselves. I had this opportunity then. So I started, I had my mind maps out and I started going through all of my whys. I did something. What can I build here? Where do I see the whole? Because I love the legal industry. Like I love law. I don't love following law. I'm a rebel, but I love law. I think those are the rules to the game. If you want to be successful, you know laws. What I started seeing of what's lacking, like, with COVID coming, with technology advancing, with lawyers not becoming more accessible, what I saw lacking is this disconnect between the IT world and law. Like the court system and the laws are from the 20th century. And we're, considering going and living on Mars. Like, right. There's such a huge gap there. And 3 years, 4 years after being in the company, having gained the experiences I'd gained, working with people I've worked with, learning the lingo, learning AI, like all this stuff, I didn't know these before. Now I could have a new dream. Now I could think like, where can I be of service? I'm service driven. I like to be needed. I like to be in places where I'm necessary and I can contribute something new. And I didn't feel that there was a lot left for me to do. Like our products were, awesome. Company was growing. Our problem was this urgency, which solved overnight with the pandemic.
Crazy.
All the right people were in. We had a really great team. All the right people were put in the places. We had created this growth plan of getting into other industries, like licensing our technology into other industries that I had built out, like licensing the exact underlying technology, for example, for cannabis, for seed to sell management, or for insurance, for client management. So we were getting ready to have everything that for 4 years we built to launch. So do I want to be a part of that? I'm not at heart operations manager. I'm not, do the same thing every day. And I thought, well, there's other people with that skill set who could shine in these positions now. I've contributed what I needed to contribute. Now what can I do to set myself up for the rest? Who knows, the rest of my life, the rest of a few years, who knows? Like we all change and plans change. And when I analyzed it that way, and I drew all of these mind maps and pages, I have like, those notebooks you see, they're all filled with plans from that year when all of this was happening. And I came up with this new idea, like the front end. Originally, actually, when we talked about building 2nd.law before it transitioned into being a proof of concept for the technology, we had this idea of combining like education, like have you seen Masterclass? Mm-hmm. That style for law. And we tested it back then on IP content just to sell the video and teach people. And then they can use the technology, for example, the bot or document assembly software alongside of it for do-it-yourself. But when we went to launch that, I just didn't have the bandwidth to invest the time to build the front end. All of this marketing and content, content creation takes time, energy, passion. Yeah. So I built the back end. And now COVID not only created the opportunity to have a new dream, but created a new need. Like people didn't know what they're entitled to, what benefits. People didn't know what's going on with the immigration system, how to do it. They couldn't access the lawyers they accessed before, whether they were having trouble being online and accessible, or they were still trying to, you couldn't go to people's offices. So there was a new problem I love problems that I could solve. So I decided to focus on that. And I spent the last year building a school that's getting ready to launch on Monday that covers so much of what we talked about entrepreneurship, international travel, like just understanding what it takes to follow your passion. So removing the borders of your mind for your passion to shine through, and then removing the borders of your passport. You don't always have to be an American company. You can be an American company without being an American resident. Like all of these are a lot of strategic decisions for people. So I built the school around this idea of founders without borders, mixing in my business experience, my education experience, my international law and human rights experience, my IT experience into this I don't know what to call it, into this project, because it's combining school, like selling guides and videos of content, with templates, like my most treasured templates that I use. We love templates. We've all developed our own. Selling those, having the podcast. So it's really just telling stories. And I feel like inspiration and this push, these types of conversations could change lives. So there's the podcast, and then finally the law firm.
And for folks listening live, it's Friday, April 16th. So this is going live Monday, April 19th. For anybody who's listening, the recording, it's probably live already. So check it out. And so where are people going to find this course, or is that not out yet?
It will be listed on my website. So the school is called Love School, LAWVE, and it's on my website, baharansari.com/school.
Nice. Thank you. Awesome. It's super, there's so much there that I just really loved. And, number one, the kind of self-realization of, what am I doing? What do I want to do? How do I want to spend my time? I think not only did COVID shake things up, for many people, it also showed people how precious life can be, and how, like, at every given moment, as much as we can, we should really focus on doing the best that we can and doing the most and doing what really drives us, if you have that opportunity. And, you're in a position where you could say, look, I've done all this. Do I keep going and grinding and becoming an operator? Or do I follow my passion of creating? And so it's really cool that you did that. I think, to your point about bravery earlier, it's also scary to step away from something that's working, and that sounds comfortable going forward, right? But comfort doesn't always mean that that's what you want. So I think that's super cool. And obviously I more than anyone else, perhaps, I totally understand that idea that creating content, good content that actually educates people, connects with them, and sort of isn't just for the sake of putting it out there, but it's for the purpose of actually getting through to people. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes certainly passion. So I can imagine how that it's like, you can't do all three. I mean, there's just not enough hours in the day. You need to sleep, you need to eat, you need to relax. Were you just during this time? I mean, you obviously were continuing to run 2nd.law. You're still doing. I mean, you're still focusing on the law firm. I suspect you probably came back. Are you kind of refocusing on the law firm more now that sort of Case.one is a little bit out of your professional life?
Yeah, I really think, like, first of all, I want to make a point about the opportunity. You said that when people have an opportunity, I want to make a point about that, because I think every person has the opportunity and should chase the opportunity to follow their passion. And it might not be as standard now, like 100 years ago, 50 years ago, people didn't get married for love. They got married for a lot of other reasons, not love as primary. And maybe that sounds insane right now. To all of this stuff sounds cliche, like do what you love. And if you love what you do, you won't have to. It's true though. And maybe it sounds weird right now, but it's the same as marriage. Like 50 years, people are going to look back and think the ones who did the jobs they didn't love and just worked for money were crazy. So be an early adopter, like this is a concept now. Just live your passion. Like forget about the cliches that you won't work a day in your life. We all work. It's work. Right. It's work. Like, I've loved everything I've done. I loved Case.one. I still love Case.one. I love 2nd.law, but I know my capacity is to stay focused on 2 projects. Some people's capacity is to stay, focused on 1 project. I need to. I like the switch. I work on this, I put it down, I work on that one, I put it, it kind of moves and weaves together. But find something like that where it excites you to wake up in the morning. The kind of clients, work with the kind of clients who excite you when you have a meeting, that you would actually wake up for and want to talk to them, not think, oh, not this guy, I can't believe he's calling me again. Like, for me, as some of the biggest changes I made, I never wanted to take the phone calls that I would say, my God, this client, I don't want to talk to this client.
Yep.
Like, I made a point to be selective with who I work with, how I work with, because I want to be excited about them, listen to them, remember like the little things they said to me 8 meetings ago, 6 months ago, just off the top of my head, because I was so present and I was listening and I'm invested in them. So for me, I had to switch out. I switched out Case.one and added in my other company that houses all of the content stuff, like the content agency, is Love. So everything, podcast, school, document templates, everything is under this project. And it's very much related in subject to what I do with my law firm. I only work with founders. I help founders go global, whether it's to move to the US or not. And I help them set up some strategic revenue creation avenues, like licensing their technology or licensing their intellectual property and stuff. So it's very much related. The separation of companies, it's necessary because all of the attorney ethical rules, or it would just be another department. So to me, I look at it all as one, but of course, for the sake of law, we'll keep them separate. So I plugged these two in. But you asked me a question and I went off on a tangent on passion.
No, that's the most important thing. I mean, I think you mentioned it. I was saying, like, now that you've stepped back in, or you're really, you're pushing to grow this content sort of company and agency, and the podcast is free, but then of course you have paid content, which is templates and do it yourself and videos, information. And then of course you have your law firm, which you still practice. So the question was whether you're now refocusing more energy into the law firm to have it grow. But I think the answer is yes. But you've also, it's not that you've now are 100% there. You've replaced sort of, I mean, you're 100% on both things, which I understand as a founder of multiple companies. It sounds impossible, but it's doable.
This is all of my new projects are the way I'm growing my law firm. Yeah. So my law firm is very boutique now. It's not volume based. It's very boutique. I work with very specific people, but I still want to make content accessible. There are people who have the intelligence and the capabilities to do a law on their own, who may not be able to afford my services, or who I may not take on as a client. So the courses are geared to those. Like, I have 10 years of experience, almost 10 years of experience only doing extraordinary talent. So I have developed my own ways that work, and I've turned those into a course that people can use on their own. It hits my check mark of wanting to teach. Remember, I got the LLMs to become a professor one day. Now I have my own school. So that's, personally really appealing to me. And as far as like contract templates and documents that we sell, there's very few scenarios, in small businesses or new businesses where you need personalized stuff, where you actually need to speak to an attorney. More so, for example, you just need terms and conditions to get your website going. Mm-hmm. So the templates and stuff go there. So if you think of the spectrum as everything I do, clients start on social media, I give them a lot of free content to learn, to just, if they're thinking and dreaming about opening a business, like what they need to be aware of. We tell the stories of triumph and failures of people that I talk to, other immigrants or other business owners. Then they go to my school. I have some free content in my school. Like, for example, I have a course breaking down the Y Combinator checklist of what you need to close Series A legally, everything you need to know, what it is, where they can find that document. If they don't have it, how they can get it, because that could delay closing. Most founders are interested. So this is the school and the documents. And if that doesn't work, they could upgrade to get some consulting from the law firm on what they've already created, or become a full client. So even all of these steps, it wasn't just built for me and my passions and what I need, but it was built taking into consideration the mindset of the founder, of the person I want to work with, and how they go through their process. Would they even need a lawyer? What knowledge do they need to avoid Google and actually get it, in a way that they can consume?
Right. Because otherwise, I mean, it's a lot of these things. You're both curating, and you're also, of course, bringing your own information so that they can spend an hour doing this, not 2 months learning and making the wrong decision and learning from that. Um, yeah, 100%. I mean, that's amazing. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I'm not going to lie, I think we should do a second episode where we just talk about social media, because there's been so much, and there's still a whole nother section of this discussion. And I think I want to give it as much sort of respect, and I want to honor that topic as much as this one. So I want to kind of stay for just a few more minutes before I let you go on this technology space. Number one, my question is, for Case.one, for 2nd.law, are you still utilizing tech through the firm? Are you still using Case.one sort of baseline technology, or have you gone sort of in the direction of it's going to be boutique? You get to talk to me. There's not as much automation. It's just me, the human, doing the work and the conversation.
So it's more that I have no automation yet. I'm working on bringing back some of the elements, but what was really important for me to build is a lot of the content stuff, and building the front end and narrowing down who I want to work with. But I also decided to build an app. So the app, we're going to start testing it in the next 2 weeks. It should be ready for release next month, but I decided to taking into consideration who I'll work with, that they're on the go. I myself do 80% of my things on my phone. Knowing that that's the type of people I wanted to work with, I wanted to create something accessible for them. So the app has the front end that clients can interact with us. They can purchase services, they can sign contracts, ask questions from attorneys, exchange documents on the app. There's an attorney version of it. So if it's an attorney in my network, I take other attorneys, whether they're immigration or other practice areas. There's different fee arrangements of how they would enter, but they have their own version of the mobile app. And then there's a back end to it that hopefully I will integrate with some sort of case management afterwards, or chatbot somewhere in the app. The same chatbot that I used before, I want to use within the interface of the app. So for now, I've built it differently. I don't need a lot of backend automation just because it is so boutique. I don't want a lot of touches. I don't want marketing softwares for them to get any email from me or my firm that wasn't written with thought. They're busy. I don't want them to ignore things that come from my law firm. Right. So I don't send them anything, but it's no automation for now.
And do you, maybe this is a little bit of foreshadowing, but do you think this is an app that can eventually scale to be something that other law firms can use? Or is this just like the 2nd.law app that you get it just to work with you?
It's funny you say that. I've been thinking about this a lot, whether I want to license the app, just the app for other people to use, or whether I want to franchise the entirety of both companies and the concept of the content-based school law firm. And my mind map on that started yesterday. So I think I'll come up. I'm just doing the risk analysis. I'm doing the market research and, creating financial projections. But I always like to give, I get pulled into a lot of conversations just to share my knowledge. I don't sell technology right now, nor do I sell marketing services. I like to share what I do. And I have had people who've been interested to just take the whole thing, like just give it to me, whether it's with your brand or I'll put my own brand. And I'm genuinely starting to consider it.
Yeah, no, it could be a great idea. Maybe there's an opportunity for both. Well, hopefully for our part 2 with Bahar Ansari, there's going to be, maybe we'll have more of an answer for that. Well, so I have 2 more questions. One of them is kind of a broader one, but you touched a little bit about integrations recently, just before. One of the things that conversations I've been part of, something I'm really kind of passionate about, and you're seeing more and more, is this sort of idea of maybe open APIs or just generally API integration potential within the immigration technology space. I'm curious to know your thoughts. I know Case.one was broader than immigration tech, but you are still an immigration attorney, and you're sort of building immigration tech. And now again, where do you think the industry is? What do you think it's moving towards? Where do you think it's going?
I genuinely think that USCIS will finally release a software. And I see the immigration system in the US looking more similar to Australia, where there is an electronic system in place that's open API that any other company could plug into, that you can just click to file no matter what software you use. I think that's the most fair way of doing it. I think that's the best way of doing it, because the point is to make that part of it, close that loop with USCIS. I think you and I had this conversation before, like the Department of Homeland Security and USCIS, they're already using Palantir software that's capable of building any of this on. So there's really no excuse of why they're not doing it. I would assume they're starting on customizations now and they're doing something. If that happens, I feel like more companies will be encouraged to open their APIs to each other.
Yeah.
I don't really believe in that kind of competition, so I don't understand why they wouldn't just open their APIs. Like, the goal is to bring value and comfort and ease for the user. If your user is happy, they will refer other users and your user base will grow. So if you're being stingy and thinking they'll steal my idea, if your idea is not patentable, why are you worried about them stealing it? That means it wasn't novel. That means it's not new. It exists. Other people have it.
Right.
And one of the things that my co-founder used to tell me, that he's like, ideas mean nothing. Like, everybody would come and say, even me, like, I have this great idea. Oh, that was my idea. He's like, ideas mean nothing. It's all about execution. Like, all right, I agree with that. There is a lot to the execution, and ideas could themselves be really valuable if they're really novel and new and disruptive. I doubt that's the case now in any of the technologies we use. If it's not being used in law or in immigration specifically, it's being used in some other industry. It's not brand new. Everybody took inspiration from somewhere else. So if founders kind of put that back and want to work together, I think that's beneficial to them. But I really see the change at this stage coming from the government side and pushing this wave of connections. Because once they open their API, then software companies will open their API just so clients can connect. And once that happens, if it's open for the client, other companies can connect.
Yeah, definitely. And it opens up the door for, I'm saying this selfishly with Laborless, but, we focus on a specific thing. We're hyper specialized. And I would rather see our company plug into other companies rather than them allocate resources to build probably a mediocre version at best of what we do, because we've spent time just thinking about this problem. I wish we can all be sort of one big happy family, because at the end of the day, we're trying to support the same clientele. And to your point, if you do a great job, you'll get more clients. They're happier. They can grow with you. I think this idea of allowing open APIs, even let's say before USCIS opens up, I totally hear what you're saying, but let's say that takes another few years. My hope is that at the very least, sort of on the private tech space, on the immigration side, it will continue to, API potential and capabilities will continue to grow. That's kind of what I see happening as well. So I appreciate you sharing that, because if anyone's listening out there and you're running an immigration tech company, come on.
Yeah, I think people should do what they're good at, and if you're forced to expand just because your clients are asking, instead of being able to call, like I can call you and say, Roman, we need H1B, H1B stuff. We need that, refer me to people, bring people, let's build a team to do that. Right. We have that relationship. And I feel like most people should have that. I'm not going to try to dip my foot or copy someone who's not in my space. I specialize in this. This is what I do. What do you do? How can we work together? And everyone complains about big corporate and they're taking everything, or, there's this mentality of not liking big corporate. Well, this is an opportunity. Come together, work together, so that big client doesn't have to go buy from a big corporate who has the development team to support it. We could build our own, community-based provider or vendor by just knowing other people.
And my thinking with that, and maybe you would agree, is that we just go on and forge that road. And when it works, we are our own best sort of beta test. And if and when the business model works, other people will say, yeah, okay, fine. Sounds good. versus, trying to convince them and build a business model as to why we have to all connect. Like, I'll just connect with someone else. And then when you see the benefit that we're providing, you might say, all right, let's connect as well. But I love that. I want to ask you just one last question, because I kind of like to end these with, with sort of maybe something a little bit more fun. Have you ever had your hair any other color besides pink?
Actually, this is a little purple.
It's a little purple. Oh, okay. Because I see, you're so colorful. And I wish when I was a kid, all right, this was actually really bougie when I think about it, but we had a barber who came to our house to cut sort of my family's hair, just how he did business. I don't think he was more expensive than other people. He was just like a Russian guy that we knew who was an artist, a photographer. He cut hair. And when I was a teenager, I liked punk rock, and I was like, I want, blue hair. And every single week or every month, whenever he came, he'd always forget the blue dye in his car. And I was a kid, so I was like, come on, all right, fine, next time. And only when I got older, I realized that he was totally lying. He was probably talking to my parents. He's like, there's no way I'm going to put blue hair on this kid. And my parents were like, yeah, just lie, make something up. But that has never gone away. I know you and I chatted about sort of, the long hair thing. I'm curious. Yeah. I asked if you've ever had any other color, but like, what inspires, I guess, maybe that's a better question. What inspires like being so colorful and playful with your brand? And maybe that's foreshadowing into part 2 of our discussion.
When I was still living in Iran and I was 50, I was in the 7th or 8th grade. I had dyed my hair like a burgundy color. I have like your color hair, maybe a little darker. And I was hiding it because I got kicked out of school. You weren't allowed to dye your hair. I got kicked out of school. The one time I've ever gotten kicked out of school or in trouble was because I dyed my hair. I would sneak makeup, and you're not allowed to do any of that.
Wow.
So some of the backup stuff, like I thought I would either be a lawyer, psychologist, or go to beauty school, or be a clothing designer. I'm really creative. I like fashion and I like hair. So I've had my hair red, burgundy, pink, dark. Like a few years ago, after I graduated from law school, I dyed my hair brown, and I came home and my parents were shocked because I've been blonde for a really long time. My dad used to always tell me, just go natural, just let it be brown. And I came in the house and he looked at it and he's like, what did you do? You look terrible. He never asked me to leave my hair natural again after that because it didn't look like me, but I've had it long, short, brown, red, pink. I like the silver purple because I can do it myself. In case you can't tell, I cut my own hair and I dyed it. So it's not a lot of work. It's kind of my fun thing. I watch videos and I learn it and I do it myself. So I like to play with, anything artsy.
That's incredible. And yeah, for me, I think your willingness and sort of just confidence in doing that in our industry, which, let's be fair, a lot of other people might want to, but then they're like, oh no, I shouldn't, and this and that. I'm sure it's part of your brand and people know you for that. And I think it's out there on your Instagram and your social media. So I think to me, this is maybe, again, foreshadowing to hopefully our next discussion, where we'll talk about sort of what you think about branding, what you think about marketing, how our personal brand translates into what we put out into the world, and then what that in turn does for our business, which I think is a lot. If you ask me, I'm very passionate about people just not caring as much and just putting themselves out there and being their honest selves.
Me too. I think I give two pieces of advice, like be unapologetically yourself and make your own rules. Like, I don't want to work with someone who doesn't want to work with me because of my appearance. I want to be me. I'm a lawyer, but I'm a human. I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm an aunt, I'm a friend. I go out, I have my creative side, I design stuff like this. All of it is a part of who I am. And all of these stuff, like dipping my foot in anything that I have any remote interest in, is expanding my mind, is expanding my personality. It's I keep talking about removing these borders because my phrase for everything is founders without borders, but it really applies to everything. Like, you can't do anything in life, even if you want to work for other people, if you are not authentically who you are, or you're embarrassed to be who you are because of what other people may think. Like, I've gotten comments about my hair. I've gotten lack of. So my parents support my crazy entrepreneurial side, but they certainly didn't, support a lot of my haircuts and the shavings and a lot of colors. But You know, you got to be who you are and you got to show who you are. And it inspires other people to be who they are, but they also understand your authenticity. Like, I, if I sit there, I could see, sometimes I put myself in other people's shoes and I think, you know, they see me outside and I wear whatever, I do whatever, I say whatever. And sometimes I'm thinking like, oh my God, they must really judge me or think I'm crazy. And it's just an instant. It's for an instant. I think that I'm like, oh, well, at least I guess they'll remember me. So it is what it is.
I
Just
love
be
that.
who you are.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. I mean, that's so true. And I'm sure whatever it is that they think, it's probably good. And if it's not, that's probably going to be even more memorable, to your point. So
I take a lot of pride in surprising people and being underestimated. I say, you know, sometimes I make a joke that the inside of my head is as colorful as the outside. Like, I don't feel the need to justify my intelligence or my experience. I did that for a really long time. Like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't born like so confident thinking I can be who I want. This is all through experiences in life. And I did conform. I did put a lot of my creativity, essentially creativity is a feminine quality. It's what's associated with women. But whether that creativity is in men or women, it's been oppressed by society. And now in this day and age, like after COVID, creativity is the new currency. And if you don't let it flow when it wants to come, whether it's through your hair or through art or through business or somewhere, you're suppressing like half of who you are. That's just, and the more you suppress who you are, the crappier life feels, because nothing ever fits or nothing ever works the way you want it to. And it doesn't, because you're not working in being who you are and showing who you are. So I'm a huge fan of people just expressing themselves however it comes, because it sucks pretending to be someone you're not. I did that. I was a litigator. I had to go to court. I had to tone down my look. Even when I was at a startup, Case.one, 2nd.law, whatever it is, there were a lot of occasions where I tried to tone down who I am, what I think, what I say, or what I look like. And I got to a point, thankfully, in my life that none of that matters to me. It only matters what value I can bring to people, how I can help people, how I can be of service. That's, you know, how I can be of service, how I can be independent, and how I can be peaceful and happy. And that's all that matters to me.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, Bahar. This was incredibly inspiring and interesting. And maybe I'll call you one day to help me with the blue, because I don't think I can get it, but I still want it. I'm telling you, I still want it one day.
It's so easy. Just do it.
Yeah. I got to watch some YouTube videos, honestly.
I can send you a couple of good ones.
Oh man. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, I appreciate it. Thanks for spending so much of your Friday with me, with everyone who's listening. I hope we have a part 2 of this, because I really, really would love to pick your brain and just have the inspiring conversation of how people can be themselves and utilize that actually in a powerful way to grow their law firm or their legal practices or their just businesses in general, which is, to me, the best of both worlds. You're happy with being yourself and you're successful. But in the meantime, thank you. Have an awesome weekend. And appreciate you being here. Thank you for having me. And I'd love to come back. I always enjoy talking to you. Likewise. Thank you. Thank you. All right. If you're still here listening live, thank you. That was so amazing. Such a great conversation. I hope you feel inspired. I hope you feel confident with yourself. I kind of want to, I realize that I'm always putting my own hair up when I'm up, and I've never done anything live with my hair down. So maybe I'll do it next time, because I'm not going to lie. I also feel like, well, this is a little more traditional. And so perhaps I should go against the grain a bit too. So something for me to think about, hopefully something for you all to think about. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments and for watching and listening. And be here next week for our next episode of the GMI Rocket Show. In the meantime, have an awesome weekend. And as always, peace out.